If you have ever thought to yourself, do I have the right background to be a fractional CMO? Or maybe I'm not sure if my experience fits the mold, then you're exactly who I made this episode for. I want you to know there is no perfect resume for this kind of work, and that is great news for you. So today we're going to talk about why so many experienced marketers doubt their background, what kind of experience actually matters when you're leading at the CMO level, and how to start looking at your background for what it is, which is your secret sauce. So your differentiator and maybe your USP, if you will, to use a marketing term. Let's get into it. Most marketers think their background really defines what's possible for them, but in reality, it's actually how they think and how they show up as a leader that defines what's possible. So we often underestimate what we know and what we bring to the table because for us, it just feels normal and intuitive. And when we start comparing ourselves to other people, some doubts can show up. You might think, well, my background's all over the place. I've done too many different things. That was certainly me for a time. You might feel like I've only worked in one industry. Would anyone hire me out of it? Or maybe you've been a specialist for years. So maybe you've been social media manager or doing paid ads most of your career. You might be thinking, do I know enough about marketing as a whole to lead? And then on the flip side, maybe you've been a generalist and you've kind of hopped around, you've kind of done everything, and you don't feel you deeply know one area of marketing. And you're wondering, okay, do I know enough to lead? And I know that can feel so real, having those doubts and those fears. And I want to tell you, it is misplaced in most cases. So what qualifies you is not necessarily the jobs you've had, the industries you've worked in. It's actually how those experiences have taught you to think and show up like a leader. We're going to dig into all of this. And I want to make sure if you take one thing away from this episode, I want to make sure you know there is not one kind of marketer who is right for this role. So we're going to talk through the various different types of backgrounds that I often see from my students joining Fractional CMO School or people that are stepping into the CMO space and the unique strengths that each background allows that person to bring to the table. First, we're going to talk about if you've been in one industry for most of your career. Usually with that, you've seen the full cycle. You've been working in one industry or one, place, and you've seen highs, lows, market shifts. You've seen the changes in consumer behavior in that space, and you really understand how to lead and how that impacts marketing over the long term, which is really cool. Not a lot of people can say that if they've jumped around quite a bit. And you usually then know the customer really deeply and the industry really deeply. So even if you might be considering switching industries when you step into fractional work, the ability to know and understand what was important. So for you to be able to say, okay, I knew all of these things about my industry, all of these things about my client, and that was how I was able to show up like a strong leader and how I was able to create strategy and why I made the decisions I made. That skill set, you'll know what to look for when you go into a brand new industry. You're going to say, well, I need to know this, this, and this, because that is critical for me to make the right decisions. Then the other thing too is you know what really moves the needle and what's just kind of noise or distractions. Often you'll see people jumping on the new thing. I can think of a million things over the last 5 years. I don't remember what it's called, but there was that social media platform that people would have calls on or something, group calls, or I forget. And everyone was jumping on it for a time. And when you've been in one industry or one niche for a while, you kind of tend to ignore that. And you build this internal compass of decision making around, is this right for our audience or our industry? And you have this really great filter. So you're not jumping on everything. You're looking at it through the lens of the company you're at, the customers that you have, and making a decision based on what's best for them. You'll be able to carry that forward into your fractional work, which is amazing. Lastly, I think that staying in one space for a long time, you really build a sharp intuition and leadership muscle. So you're able to almost intuitively know what to do because you've been in a space. And so you likely will have a high degree of self-trust, which is going to be subtly communicated to your clients and make them feel really comfortable, make your team feel really comfortable. And you're going to have this commanding leadership presence that I think is really, really strong. So now we're going to move into if you have been someone who's moved across different industries or business models a lot. And that was me, 100%. I hopped around to many, many different places. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Some of the skill sets that you'll bring to the table likely, as you are probably somebody who has the ability to adapt quickly. So you can learn new markets, new audiences, new offers, new business models really, really quickly. You probably just have this way of jumping in and understanding and getting up to speed. And the other thing too is that you are great at connecting dots and making things make sense outside of, just one industry. So seemingly unrelated things, you're good at spotting patterns, and you're able to take, often somebody who's jumping around is quite innovative. They're able to say, hey, like, I know it's not typical to do this thing over here in this industry, but I've seen it work really well over here and over here. And I'm seeing this pattern here that I think signifies bringing in or testing something different. You're usually a little bit more innovative than someone who maybe has been in the industry and they just kind of see the way things are done and stick to that. So really cool ability to just bring in different ideas and connect patterns and just get up to speed really quickly on something new, and being able to juggle different clients, like that's going to feel really easy for you in most cases. Now, if you have specialized in one area, maybe you've been a social media manager most of your career, or you have managed paid marketing. You've got so much you're bringing to the table. You might have some doubts around, can I manage all of marketing? But I want to speak to what you're bringing to the table and why I think that yes, you can. So one is you have built mastery. You know your area of expertise inside and out, and you know both the bigger picture, so strategically what you should be doing and how to build out a big strategy or high level strategy. And then you also understand the nuance, the details that really make a difference in something working or not working. So that is such an invaluable skill, and you can apply that across different areas of marketing. Then next is if you've been functionally deep in something, you can spot quality instantly. You know when someone's good at their craft and you know what to look for. So you might be feeling like, oh, I don't know if I would know outside of marketing, but you do. Like those skills of filtering what is good marketing, what's not good marketing, that's going to be more applicable than you can think in different channels. And it's because you have learned that in one. When they say, someone who learns languages can pick up other languages relatively easily, it's going to be the same for you, because while you may not have focused in these other areas, like again, maybe you've been a social media manager and email, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know. You will be surprised the similarities that span both. Caption on a social media having a hook and the subject line needing a hook, and each headline through an email hooking the reader and keeping their attention. And you will realize once you start getting in, there's so many pieces you can lean on and pull and draw from with your other experience. Lastly is you bring credibility. You understand what it takes to make marketing perform. If you've specialized in something, you probably deeply know how to drive results in that one thing. You've probably done things like iterative testing. You know and understand the analytics behind what you do. And all of those things will be transferable into other areas of marketing and will make you actually a very, very strong leader because you know how to drive results. It's really just about redirecting that focus and that leadership over to another area or other areas in marketing. Now, if you've been more of a generalist, and again, this was me, if you have never really been someone who's gone deep in one area of marketing, but you feel like you know a little bit about maybe not all, but a lot of different areas of marketing, you probably have built breadth and systems thinking. So you're the kind of person that can see the bigger picture. Again, you might not deeply know the details, but you understand how everything's all connected and you know how to put a plan together or a strategy together and make it feel cohesive and ensure that the pieces are all talking to each other. The other thing is you probably have a really great skill for prioritization. So looking at and understanding the marketing function and saying, okay, based on what our goals are, what we're trying to do, here is how I suggest we prioritize these things, or here's what I think needs to come first. And being able to really distinguish between what is a must have, what's a nice to have, and really what's going to drive growth now versus maybe being more of a long-term initiative that you might be leaning on later when the team has a bit more capacity. So you're probably used to wearing multiple hats and coming in and rolling up your sleeves and learning something and getting things done. And that's going to be amazing. And you'll also probably, because you know a little bit about everything, You'll be really great with team management and being able to bring in experts. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit here, because that's something that people often don't realize is, as a CMO, you do not need to know everything. We are leaning on experts a lot. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But my point here is that different paths and different backgrounds create different strengths that you bring to the table as a leader. Again, depth builds instinct, range of experience, adaptability, specialization, you've got the mastery, and then generalization, you've got perspective, prioritization, all of that. So when you step into a CMO role, you're drawing on all of these kind of intangible pieces that you have built over the length of your career. So you don't just need to have this certain set of background. You're really leaning on these strengths that you have. I'm going to give you a little bit of a story time here. So this is just to show you, in reality, my background and what that looked like for me. My career path before stepping into the fractional CMO space was, quite honestly, all over the place. I started in the tech startup space and moved into tourism. I worked for a multinational hotel chain. Then I was at Lululemon in the e-commerce space. And then I was over at Deloitte, big, huge consulting firm working for various different brands. I was on the agency side. We had so many different kinds of clients. And for years, I always thought to myself, I am all over the place. I don't really have a clear lane. I don't even have an industry I'm sticking with. And now I see it really differently. I learned how to think like a marketer. I learned how to think like a strategist. And again, I was able to come into all of these businesses and spot patterns and be really innovative. And it really has become my edge. So I'll give you a story here. When I started working at Lululemon, prior to Lululemon, I had almost no experience working with e-commerce. I had a couple of agency clients, but if you've been on the agency side, you know how kind of removed you are from the day-to-day business. And you're usually, on one project and then done. Most of my experience had been with small teams and small budgets. And suddenly I'm in this company where we have huge teams, huge budgets, multiple departments, layers of process. It was so different than any environment I had ever worked in. When I started, I just remember feeling a little bit intimidated and excited, of course, but I remember thinking, okay, this is such a different world. And I don't know how I'm going to be in this space. Am I going to be successful? And do I have what it takes? Then I realized, once I started getting into my role and understanding and working into the company, I realized actually that I had everything I needed to be really, really strong in the role. And it was really about leaning on the fundamentals, how I make decisions, how I think strategically, how I lean on and leverage the team members around me that are functional experts. And really, it just was taking all of the things I had done in my career and amplifying it at a bigger scale. So it was the same, just bigger budgets, bigger teams, all the same. It really just came down to knowing the customer, knowing the offer, messaging, great execution, all of these things that I had done again and again and again through my career, now just at a little bit of a different level. I really did, once I stepped into that space and started to recognize and have more confidence in myself, I adapted really quickly and I ended up doing really well at Lulu. I ended up moving up and I was managing the biggest revenue driving campaigns at the company. How that happened was because I had the skill set from before. And it wasn't necessarily that I came from Nike or came from wherever. It was just that I had critical thinking and strategic skills and leadership skills that I could carry into this role that made me really successful in this environment, even though it was different. So again, you do not need to have done everything before. It's really just about what those leadership skills that you're bringing into the role that you're stepping into, thinking strategically, all of that stuff. It's all very, very transferable. It's just this role, when you think about the fractional CMO role, it is so much less about where you've worked and what you've done in the past, and so much more about how you think and how you lead and how you show up. I want to talk a little bit about what companies are actually looking for when they hire a fractional CMO. I'm not going to talk to you about what they think they need. I'm going to talk to you about what they are saying kind of between the lines. And we'll also talk a little bit about what the fractional CMO role actually is. So when someone hires a fractional CMO, they are not hiring someone to run ads, write copy, etc. They're hiring someone to look at the bigger picture for marketing and make sense of it, set direction, give them clarity, give them a plan. And you have to remember, in this role, we're not the person that's doing everything. We don't even deeply need to know everything. Often I will recommend strategies that I don't deeply know. I'll come in and say, okay, well, I definitely think that we want to do some Pinterest ads, or SEO optimization is really important here. Do I know that? Like, could I be the person to actually go do that? No, absolutely not. I don't know those. I have never run my own Pinterest ads, but I know when it's the right strategy, and I know that we can pull in experts that know that space. So, reminder, you are the person deciding what needs to be done and then building the team or system to make that happen. So it's really all about having this strong filter around, what do I think is right for this target audience, this offer, this size of business, this size of team, and why. And really rooting that in your critical thinking and your strategic mind and, the leadership skills that you bring to the table. You might say something like, we should be running paid ads for this launch. We want to do a website. You're not in the back end configuring Google Analytics, anything like that. You're bringing in the team, the agency, whoever working with your client's team. You're just saying, here's the strategy. Here's why this matters. Let's make this work. Let's bring in who we need to do all of this work. So that's the shift you're making from doing to leading, is having that clear boundary and knowing where your work ends and the team or agency or execution side begins. That's why your background does not have to cover everything. You just need to know how to think strategically and lead through other people or lead your clients. A few things that I lean on that I think really help me do this well is I'm always asking myself this set of questions. So, number one, what does this business need right now to hit its goals, which is typically growth? What does it need right now? And I'm often looking at the size of the company, the budget available, the team available, and then figuring out what makes sense based on their size. Then I'm looking at, who is the audience and what do they care about? Where are they hanging out? What do they want? Like, are we meeting them where they're at? Are we solving a problem? Like, how can marketing meet the audience where they're at? How do we go to the audience and make things easier, right? Then I'm also looking at, the bigger picture and saying, across the full marketing department, landscape, ecosystem, what is working, what is not, and where is the biggest opportunity? Really low hanging fruit. We want to be identifying that. And we want to be able to cut things that are not working. Often you'll come into a client's company and you'll see they are doing a million things that are not moving any needles. And so sometimes the biggest results, the biggest success you can have is by having them stop a bunch of stuff and just focus in the one place that matters. And then suddenly you'll see, revenue or leads or whatever metric you're trying to move, like that suddenly flies up because their focus is in the right place. And then lastly, who can I lean on? How can I lean on team to pull in what I need to kind of fill those gaps? If there's something you're wanting to do that the team doesn't have the skill set for, or you don't intimately know, that is okay. Because again, we don't have to know all of the things, but who can you lean on and how do you co-create strategy together and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it, but you're the expert and you know this space better than me. Help me take this from good to great. Some of the strongest fractional CMOs have a lot of humility and just don't have a problem saying, I don't really know this. Like, I think this is the right thing. And this is why I think that. And I want to lean on this expert here to help us really figure out, how do we do this in the best way possible? So just to summarize, the best CMOs are really great at diagnosing. So asking the right questions first, figuring out what is going on underneath the hood, what's happening here, what's the challenge that we have to kind of untangle. Really great at recognizing patterns, understanding what's worked, why. You can again be leaning on your experience and drawing, what have I learned that I can really pull in here. They are strong leaders. The ability to give direction and clarity to others and really stand firm in that and say, this is what I'm recommending and why, and not doubting yourself, because you do know. And a little trick that I use sometimes when I am in that space of, oh, do I know? I don't know. I'm feeling a little doubtful of myself is I will try to almost trick my brain into removing the stakes. And so it's easy for us to put a lot of pressure on ourselves and say, okay, I have to get this right for this client, or, oh, I don't know, I'm nervous. And you really want results, which is great. It's awesome that we care that much about our clients. But sometimes when I get into that space, it can really bring up a lot of self-doubt. What I will do is I'll pretend that it's my business and I'll just ignore the client for a minute and be like, okay, let's pretend this is completely my business. Big deep breaths, get centered. What do I think is the right thing to do? What would I do if this was my business, my money, my team, my goals, my investments, all of the things? And then usually from that, you have a really strong strategy, recommendation, decision, and it's not coming from a place of fear or proving or anything like that. So hopefully that tip helps. And last quality that I think is really amazing and I see in the best CMOs is humility. So they are completely okay admitting when they don't know things and bringing in someone to help them. That is so normal and nothing to be afraid of. And we don't want to be pretending we know everything anyways. That is absolutely impossible. No CMO knows everything. Certainly with how fast marketing changes and how the landscape, shifts every week, 2 weeks. It's wild. So now I want to bring this into a bit of a practical space. So you might be thinking, okay, how does this apply to me? This is where we're going to start getting into your experience specifically. So take a minute, think about your career so far. And I want you to ask yourself these questions. And if you have a journal nearby, you can grab it and journal and pause if you want in between the questions and just use this as a reflection prompt. Number 1, what kinds of results or wins keep showing up in my work no matter where I've been? You'll probably see some patterns throughout your career where you've been able to achieve certain things or do certain things, and make a list of what those are. Even if, you're kind of not sure how they connect, make a list. Number 2, what do people always trust me to take the lead on? What do they trust you to lead? Number 3, what do I naturally notice or fix that sometimes maybe other people miss? You come in and it's the first thing that you see or notice when you start working with a client or start a new job. Number 4, when things get messy or uncertain, what do I do without even thinking? That's going to tell you kind of your leadership approach when things are feeling a little bit chaotic. So when things are messy or uncertain, what's my go-to? What do I do without even thinking? Number 5, what part of marketing feels intuitive to me? So the thing that you just know that almost feels easy. You almost don't even think that it's a strength of yours because you know it so intimately. And this one, you might want to take some time to think about it, or even ask some friends, people who have worked with you, past colleagues. Sometimes it's things that are so right in front of us. I'll give you one. Actually, a friend was just telling me this the other day. Have always been really great and intuitive with design and aesthetics and branding. And it's something that I've just taken for granted. I can throw together a nice deck or some social carousels or things like that. And I've never really thought twice about it. And I didn't really think of it as a strength. I just sort of thought, I don't know, I'm a marketer and just do this. And it wasn't until someone pointed it out to me that I realized, that actually is a skill set of mine that not everybody has. And it's a place that I'm really strong in leading as well. So almost stepping into a creative direction role when I'm either doing a rebrand with a client's team or looking at some launch assets or things like that. I do have that strong eye. So with this question, I really want you to think beyond that first initial answer. What comes intuitively to you just clicks that you've always just felt has been so easy. And then last question, what do people thank you for? This might be a little bit intangible. Maybe you've, been told you're a really good manager. Maybe you're supportive. Maybe you've helped someone time and time again ask for a raise. That was me. I was always coaching my friends and coworkers how to negotiate when they were going into their review. What we want to think about here is the impact that you've had when people have worked with you. How do you make people feel? What do people thank you for? These answers will really tell you a lot about who you are as a marketing leader and what skill sets you bring to the table that are going to show up and make you really, really strong as a fractional CMO. We're getting away from what is my resume, where have I worked, what titles have I held, and we're getting into the person underneath, how you think, how you lead, what strengths you bring to the table. And these are really proof of who you are and your unique sort of leadership sauce, secret sauce. If you have been second guessing your background, here's what I want you to remember. And I said this now probably 3 times. There is no perfect resume, no perfect background for this role. Every job, every project, every weird career turn you've had has taught you something that's made you better at what you do, made you, have this unique leadership skill set that makes you who you are and built the way that you think and show up as a leader. And that is what makes you a really, really strong fractional CMO. So you've got your own perspective, your own way of seeing things, doing things. That's the value you bring to the table. So I want you to stop questioning it, start owning it confidently, unapologetically. You are ready. So if you're building a fractional CMO business and you don't want to waste years figuring it out the hard way, Fractional CMO School is open for enrollment, and we'll give you the step-by-step roadmap that I used to build my business to 6 figures in 6 months and then $1 million per year with a small team of 2. There's expert coaching, one-on-one support, and whether you are an aspiring fractional CMO or you're growing, you're trying to figure out how to scale your team or do the role in a way that doesn't lead to burnout, it is a great fit for you. And you can learn more at thecmooffice.com. If you love this episode today, here is what I would love from you. Take 30 seconds to rate and review the show. It helps more marketers and CMOs find this content. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're going to implement any of this or you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out in my DMs on Instagram. I would love to support you. And thank you for listening. I will see you next week.